Wednesday, June 23rd afternoon session of the Portland City Council. Keelan, please call the roll.
Ryan.
Here.
Hardesty.
Here.
Maps.
Here.
Rubio. Wheeler.
Thank you, Keelan. We will start the afternoon with agenda item 500, time certain. Keelan, would you read the item?
Madam President, would you like the council attorney?
Oh, yes. Council attorney, if you could give us an abbreviated version of the rules.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Council meetings, you may sign in advance with the council clerk's office for communications to briefly speak about any subject. You may also sign up for public testimony on resolutions or the first readings of ordinances. The published council agenda at portlandoregon.gov/auditor contains information about how and when you may sign up for testimony while the city council is holding electronic meetings. Your testimony should address the matter being considered at the time when testifying. Please state your name for the record. Your address is not necessary. Please disclose if you are a lobbyist. If you are representing an organization, please identify yourself. The presiding officer determines the length of testimony. Individuals generally have 3 minutes to testify unless otherwise stated. When your time is up, the presiding officer will ask you to conclude. Disruptive conduct, such as shouting, refusing to conclude your testimony when your time is up, or interrupting others' testimony or council deliberations will not be allowed. If there are disruptions, a warning will be given that further disruption may result in a person being placed on hold or ejected from the remainder of the electronic meeting. Please be aware that council meetings are recorded.
Thank you very much. Keelan, please read item 500.
Accept the 2021 annual report for the Bull Run treatment projects.
Commissioner Maps.
Thank you. Colleagues, the item that we are about to hear is the 2021 annual report of the Water Bureau's Bull Run treatment project. Portland is in the process of building a new water filtration facility to keep our water safe and abundant for generations to come. The new water filtration facility will remove the microorganism Cryptosporidium from the water that you drink. In order to comply with federal and state mandates, Portland must complete this project by 2027. Here are some important takeaways from the presentation that we are about to hear. First, I should be clear. The Bull Run water treatment plant is a really big infrastructure project. This plant will serve millions of Portlanders for decades to come. About once a generation, City Council sees an infrastructure project of this scale, and colleagues, this is our moment. Building a water filtration plant is also not optional. The water filtration plant we are in the process of building is a mandate from the federal government, which we must comply with. In addition, today we will learn that this project is on budget. And finally, we will learn that this project has met the compliance deadline set out by the federal government. And now I'd like to turn the presentation over to Water Bureau Director Gabe Solmner. Director Solmner.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Maps. I appreciate it. Good afternoon. I am Gabe Solmner. I'm the Portland Water Bureau Director, and it's great to be with you today. Thank you for that introduction. You covered a lot of our good points there. So thank you again for the time to be with you today to give an annual update on the Bull Run treatment program. And I'm joined today by Benita Oswald of Communications and Jody Inman, our Chief Engineer. We also have other members of our project team available to assist if we've got any questions. And really, our focus today is an annual update on the Bull Run treatment program. We're giving a verbal update in addition to the written report because we know that commissioners have different levels of exposure to this project. So it's really good for everyone to hear the latest. And then I'll also mention just at the outset that as one of your newer Bureau directors, it's my commitment that Council always has clear, timely information from the Water Bureau. There's no decision to be made today, but the information that you do hear is going to set us up for work that we do over the next few years. And I'll just start our presentation with a short reminder about why we're doing the program. And as you hear the information, I'd ask you just to really keep in mind all of the program values that we're working with, including public health and equity and affordability and environmental protection, resilience, all of those, how we hold those all in balance, even though they can be in tension and often are in tension. And then Jody will share the status of the program, focusing in on our equity work and our program cost, as you heard from Commissioner Mapps. And then next you'll hear from Benita about our community outreach. And ultimately we'll just end with our next steps. So next slide. Again, just to start off with a reminder of the program benefits, the reasons why we're doing this program. You heard a little bit of that from Commissioner Mapps. Just to add on to that, we're doing this for our health. And when I talk about our health, I'm talking about using proven treatment methods to deliver clean, safe drinking water to our customers and keeping that water, as it says, safe and abundant for current and future generations. And then we're doing this for our economy. And these projects will create thousands of Portland area jobs and particularly increase opportunities for people of color and for women in the construction trades. I have those disaggregated numbers. Don't you worry, Commissioner Hardesty. I have that for you because the focus on the economy also means, in addition to our construction numbers and all of those hours, that is important. It's also important to maintain our water rate affordability. And then for our future, again, that really is focusing in on enhancing our water system's resilience and reducing future risks to better protect our customers. Because I think if the last year has taught us anything, it's that while we can't predict the future, we can be better prepared. And we know that we may be all in the same storm of the pandemic, we're not in the same boat. So these projects really do have a lens of improving outcomes for historically underserved communities and keeping our commitment to climate work. And just on that note, we're facing down this week and this weekend record high temperatures. So access to safe, clean water has never been more important. We know that. We also know that there are people who cannot pick up and move or buy bottled water in an emergency, this one or the ones we know we'll face in the future. So we really do have to keep that focused and centered in everything that we do. Next slide. All right, so just some quick context to the work that we're doing as you hear the facts and figures. It's all along this backdrop of longstanding protections since 1892, protections in our watershed, and then disinfection that started in the 1920s. And you will remember, as Commissioner Mapps said, we do need to make further improvements, and that brings us to the 3 capital projects that are in the Bull Run Treatment Program. So we have the smallest portion, which is just as important as all the others, corrosion control, which comes online next year. So that's already in construction. We have the filtration facility itself, which is in design. And then we have the pipelines that connect the facility to our system, and that's in early design. So I'll turn over the presentation to Chief Engineer Jody Inman to let you know how all of those projects are doing. Jody.
Thank you very much, Director, and good afternoon, Commissioners. Again, Jody Inman, Chief Engineer, and I'm going to kind of jump right into the first of our projects, of the 3 projects that Director Solmer mentioned, and that is the Improved Corrosion Control Treatment Project. We know that you've heard from the community concerns related to lead exposure, and we at the Water Bureau are committed to helping limit the exposure to lead in drinking water. As you know, in Portland, the main source of lead in water is corrosion or wearing away of the home plumbing. It is not in the water system. This project, with this Improved Corrosion Control Treatment Project, our water will be treated using 2 naturally occurring substances. One will increase the pH or make the water less corrosive. The second will increase alkalinity, which helps make the pH more stable and increase its effectiveness and long-lastingness. The Improved Corrosion Control Treatment Project is the furthest along of the 3. It is in construction. It will meet the compliance deadline and be online in April of next year. So we're very excited about that. There has been some exciting construction, if you like to see things being constructed and going up, with the new facilities and some very large soda ash silos, which were just delivered a couple of weeks ago. There are two social equity pieces related to the construction of the approved corrosion control treatment project. And that is that we have $3 million committed to COVID certified firms as part of the construction contract. And COVID, of course, being the Oregon Certification Office of Business Inclusion and Diversity. And then we also have a community equity and inclusion plan, which is really directed towards the minority and women workforce goals. So we have those two different components, and I'm going to give you some current data on how we're performing for those. Next slide.
Excuse me, could you go back, please? Guess I'll call on myself to call on myself. The 3 million that's committed to COVID, that's out of what? What percentage of the overall construction contract is that 3 million?
The 3 million is of a $17 million construction contract.
So it's okay. I can't do the math that quick, but it's about 15% of the contract, I think.
I won't attempt to do public math either. So we can get you those specific numbers on how that breaks down.
That would be helpful. Thank you.
Okay. So of that 3 million for COVID certified firms, we did disaggregate that, and we are happy to say that with a lot of work through the program team and our partners and the Community Equity Inclusion Committee and our contractors, we do have some good variation and diversity in our participation. The Native American component is 56%, Black is 15%, Asian Pacific 13%, Hispanic 6%, and the Caucasian, or your typically more ESB or emerging small business, is only about 10%.
I'm really struck by the Native Pacific Islander number. What did you do to make that number so enormous?
One of the benefits on this project is they really reached out, and one of our larger work components is it has been subcontracted to a Native American firm. So one of the challenges that we find ongoing with these is the type and scope of work. And this project, through the dedicated effort of the team, was able to find and give one of those larger contracts to a Native American firm.
Great work. Thank you.
Okay, so next I want to talk a little bit about the workforce and labor participation. Again, this is a snapshot in time. This is from May of 2021. For both of these, we have ongoing reporting that we're watching every month. So for the female participation, Benita, can you go ahead and move it on to, yeah, thank you. There's a lot of numbers here, so I always like the extra numbers. At the apprentice level for female participation, the goal of the Community Equity and Inclusion Plan is 9%. We currently are seeing about 50-50 between the male and female. So at the apprentice level, we are seeing some the result of some great work by the team to have that 50-50 percentage. At the journey level, the goal is 6% female. We are currently at 4.4. We do expect to get to the 6% by the end of the project with the type of work that's coming up in the future, and with renewed doubling down by the project team. This is one of those areas that I think we are focused in on how to take what we are achieving at the apprentice level and help those folks graduate up into that journey level for both female and minority participation. And we recognize that that will not likely be able to be achieved through any one particular project, but it will take our effort on multiple different projects with the community, which the team is dedicated to doing to help increase that graduation rate. Minority trade hours. The apprentice goal is 22%. We are at almost 95%. So we're very pleased with how it is going so far, and I will show the disaggregated numbers for the minority percentage on the next slide. And at the journey level, oh, go back one second, Juanita. At the journey level, we are also exceeding currently the goal. We have about 40% at the journey level minority participation. So, you know, that is encouraging also that we are seeing a higher percentage at that level. But obviously, we're creating a pool that we can hope can influence that number going even higher. All right, next slide, please, Juanita. So just to give that further breakdown, I think, you know, you see the Native American participation for the apprentice hours as being a big percentage of that. And I think some of that has to do with the Native American firm, with a large subcontractor we have. Black percentage is 10% or almost 10%, Hispanic at 12, other non-white at around 9, and Asian at 3%. And the Caucasian percentage, which we showed on the previous graph, is just about 5%. And then the journey hours by ethnicity, it's about 61% Caucasian. And then of the different minorities, about 16% Black, 16% Hispanic, around just under 7% Native American, and then a small percentage of non-white. So we do see some diversity with that minority component at the journey level, which we're also encouraged by.
And you can also see that having a majority Native American firm significantly changes the graph, right? So without that firm, we would still be doing better than we've done in the past, right? But that firm really helped to boost the numbers. And so I'm really grateful for the thoughtfulness under which you have undertaken this task. And in most categories, you're exceeding your goals, right? And where you're not exceeding your goals, you at least have a strategy and a plan about how you're going to get to that goal. So really very well done. I hope this is a model for other bureaus as we continue to face this challenge in our contract. So well done.
Thank you, Commissioner. And I'll just say one of the things that I think has led to our success is to really focus in both on the ownership of the businesses that we're contracting with, but also on those trade hours. You see those, a lot of times they go hand in hand, but you can't focus on one without the other. So just a plug as other groups are doing this to really focus in on both of those.
And with the specific commitment, getting people to journeyman status. That is a model that I hope we will emulate throughout the city of Portland, because we spend a lot of resources at pre-apprenticeship and apprenticeship, and it's silly that we don't get better outcomes from that. So thank you.
Thank you. And next slide, please, Bonita. And related to that, another important component of what we're doing on improved corrosion control, and we will be looking at on other Water Bureau projects, I think others in the city, and very specifically on the filtration facility and pipelines, is we have implemented the Rise Up training for the safe work environment. And Rise Up stands for Respect, Inclusion, Safety, and Equity in the Construction Trades. And it's a respectful workplace program that was developed by the Oregon Tradeswomen Association. And really the focus here is, now that we're getting that diversity on our work sites, we want to ensure that they feel comfortable and safe being there, to help them and support them in staying on and being able to feel comfortable to continue through their apprenticeship program towards graduation. So it's another tool to hopefully help increase that graduation rate. And then I will move in. Thank you very much, Bonita. So now with our two larger components of the program, the Bull Run filtration projects, and the filtration projects include the facility itself, as well as our pipelines. A little bit of a status update. We did achieve the first of the 3 major compliance milestones with the approval of our pilot study from the Oregon Health Authority last fall. In the past year, we completed the basis of design for the filtration facility, which is just part of the basis of design. We are working towards the second component of that, which is for the pipelines. with a complete basis of design report, hopefully coming out this fall. We brought our designer on board for the pipelines in January, and we have done a lot of geotechnical work along that route to really understand the ground that we'll be working in, as specifically as part of our seismic resiliency goals. And on all of these projects, we have the program manager, program owner support. We have the designer for the filtration facility. We have the designer for the pipelines, and then we have the contractor for the facility on board. We are meeting our co-bid certified firm equity participation goals for all of those. And then we are also currently in the process right now. We are reviewing requests for proposals to hire the contractor for the pipelines. These two projects are very early in design, having just ending up the early planning stages and moving into 30% design. And so when we think about equity for these components, it's really about focusing on supporting those co-bid firms that we have that are part of those contracts. Next slide, Juanita. And as part of that, when we kicked off this entire program several years ago, we knew that equity in contracting was one of our goals and one of the pieces we wanted to focus on. And as part of that, we have a capacity building program that is part of our program owner team, program manager team. And the firm is called the Formation Lab. I think in and of itself, it's a demonstration of success. It's a woman-owned firm that is really supported by these large projects and their work to help us build capacity with co-bid firms or other firms in the area. Well, let me change my slide. So we have offered this this capacity building program to all of the co-bid certified firms in the program, over 30 of them. When we get the contractor on board for the pipelines, we will offer it to them also. And of those 30 plus firms so far, over 20 have opted in to participate. And those range from services of structural engineering, sustainability, asset management to landscape architecture. And we have a couple of quotes, and then I think Bonita is going to talk on one particular success a little bit later on. But again, this program is really focused. It is one-on-one with each firm to help identify what they need, whether it be business support to help grow and deal with, build capacity and be successful with these larger programs and additional work, or whether it's technical support to ensure that they understand, I use the example of computer-aided drafting, that they are delivering the deliverable to the designers that is expected and giving them support when needed. Next slide, Juanita. So as we move towards construction, we again are focused really on helping those on the contracts those firms to be successful. And then we are taking advantage, are really trying to capitalize on our runway. We have a longer runway before we actually get to construction bidding on this project. Construction will start in 2023, so 18 to 24 months out. We are not taking a break. We are not stopping. We are continuing our outreach to the contracting community and workforce community groups. I think we'll be going before the Fair Contracting Forum later this year. We continue to do that outreach to try to have as many folks in that community be aware of the work coming up, to help them think about how to plan for it and to get support that they need to hopefully be able to bid on that work when it does come out. The contractor will be working with the Labor Management Community Oversight Committee in a more purposeful fashion starting this fall to really develop the construction, procurement, and subcontracting plans, which is where we really identify what will be self-performed. And then we package up the rest of the bid packages and package that work to effectively reach that subcontracting community that we're really trying to collaborate with and provide opportunity for. So although we are a ways away from construction, we recognize that it will take every minute of that time to help maximize what we can get by the time we actually put it out to bid. All right. There's no other questions on equity. I will move on. So as Gabe started off mentioning, there are a lot of program values and a lot of benefit that these projects will bring to us. Improving long-term reliability and resilience. That includes factors like our seismic resiliency, sustainability, adaptability, thinking about looking to future needs, water quality changes and regulations, which are always being evaluated and looked at. Climate change, you know, as we've seen in the last year, we have had warm, I mean, we're seeing now, every time I turn around this year, there's something new that we, you know, didn't have a very high probability for. We have warmer temperatures. We had the ice storms earlier this year. A lot of impact. We had one of the driest springs on season. So a lot of impacts from climate change that this filtration facility will help be a tool in our toolbox to help address. And that's important to us when we think about continuing to deliver excellent water every day to nearly 1 million customers. And it's not just that 1 million customers, it's particularly those that are disadvantaged and struggle to pay, because we know that when we can't deliver safe, clean drinking water, they are disproportionately affected. So we really take that to heart. And these programs will help us to implement the infrastructure that will be one of the critical tools in our toolbox to be able to address things like warmer water, which creates, you know, can be favorable for algae and creates other impacts to the system. You know, these larger storm events, which can create additional turbidity, which would require us to turn off the water or boil. We recognize, though, that this is a very large program. And that as part of that, we are committed to maintaining that affordability for those that most struggle to pay. And we also recognize, and we'll talk a little bit more about that farther on, but we also recognize the importance of this program and what it can do for the economy and the community. We had a recent study by Eco Northwest, which estimated 4,600 jobs as part of this project, over 1 billion in labor income, and over 1.6 billion in economic activity. And with the efforts of the team to focus as much of that as possible to minority and women. Next slide. So because it is a program update, and we'll give you the official status on scope, schedule, and budget. And I always say them in that order, even though they're not on the slide. Schedule, all of the projects are on schedule. Related to scope, we have one change to the council approved scope in a reduction in capacity of the facility from 145 million gallons per day to 135 million gallons per day. And that was due to some review of the supply and demand planning. From a budget perspective, we are within the amount that is funded in our rate forecast. That has not changed, but we are seeing some increases in cost estimates. And let's go ahead and go to the next slide. So we are seeing these pressures on estimated cost, and as you know, Gabe mentioned, when we think about the overall program, this is one of those pieces that can put the goals in tension. And that is, you know, this past year has been very volatile and impactful in many different ways. For a lot of folks, from a construction standpoint, you know, construction inflation in the area is about 5%, which significantly exceeds general inflation. Material pricing has been, increasing exponentially. In the last 6 months, we are seeing some of that maybe come down. I've seen lumber come down, but I think steel is still high. Commissioner Ryan had a question.
Oh, yeah, thank you. I probably should let you finish. The spike in the prices right now, is that connected to supply chain issues from COVID?
A lot of it is connected to that, yes.
Okay, yeah. That's just what I was assuming that, and I just wanted to say that on the public record because everyone's experiencing this. Those are pretty extreme.
They are, and I've also been reading on steel. Some of it is, you know, still the impact of steel tariffs, you know, and some of those other pieces, but they are very extreme. we're hopeful we're seeing some of that come back down.
Yeah, it's going to be tough to do projects on time, of course, but maybe not on budget if this keeps up. So anyway, thanks for that heads up.
Both pieces. I mean, you know, the supply piece.
The supply thing.
Because there's less supply, which means you need to order it earlier to make sure you have it. But yeah, all of these things have been a significant component of what we are seeing in what we will be getting as our next set of estimated costs for construction. We have had some known construction cost increases with some of the components. The corrosion control facility cost was a little bit higher. You know, we came in right in the middle of this pandemic and this unknown, and we have had some of our consultant fees and other things be a little bit higher. And I think some of that has to do with just the large water projects that are in the area. Okay, let's maybe move on. We'll show you where we're at. Next slide, please, Bonita. So as I mentioned, we are still within the amount we have funded in our rate forecast, which is the 1.483. We had contingency built into that rate forecast. And right now our estimated costs are using some of that contingency. And we will be having the draft basis of design report that includes the facility and the pipelines coming out later this month. And that has over is 1,024,240,000. So it is higher. And because the estimated construction cost is higher, that also has an impact on the Wiffy cost. But we do still have contingency on the project. And as I will talk about in the next few slides, what the importance of those being estimated and what opportunities we do have as we go forward before those actually become the construction costs we're bringing to you with the guaranteed maximum price. All right, next slide, Bonita. I might try to go a little faster because I know there's some really wonderful stuff to report out on the community engagement. So just to mention, you know, we have 18 to 24 months before we are back before you with the guaranteed maximum price. We will be continuously doing value engineering. We have 30, 60, 90% design. We will be getting at every one of those phases we'll be doing value engineering. We will be back before you at the very least next summer with an annual report at about 60% design. So there should be no surprises by the time we get to that guaranteed maximum price in 2023. Next slide, Bonita. And then just to reiterate, we'll be getting a new set. We got a draft facility basis of design estimate in the fall. We took significant value engineering efforts. We're going to be getting a new estimate this month. We will be continuously working to do value estimating or value engineering on the project, recognizing that we still want to meet those key program goals and not compromise on those opportunities. So with that, I will turn it over to Bonita to talk about community engagement.
Oops. Oh, can you hear me okay? Okay, good. All right. Thanks, Jody, and good afternoon, commissioners. My name is Bonita Oswald. In addition to my stellar side advancing skills, I'm also coordinating the communications for the Bull Run treatment projects. We continue to provide regular updates to the community, and during the pandemic, of course, we've leaned more into our digital outreach to promote feedback and opportunities to share our progress. We've been hosting a number of virtual meetings and events. This past year, we have also focused on the city's commitment to greater engagement with tribes and Native communities. We started an urban Indigenous engagement circle to improve ongoing communications with the urban Indigenous communities. And we've learned a lot. So we're excited to be putting together a guidance document that outlines our engagement process, the advice we received from the first phase of this work, and the ongoing partnerships and opportunities for projects, for this project and for the Water Bureau as a whole. We also began some informal discussions with 8 tribal nations to find opportunities to honor Native culture and lifeways related to our filtration project site. You can see a photo of Serena Fasthorse, who had come to speak with one of our team, or at one of our team meetings about her experience of collaborating with BES throughout a land restoration project. And since then, Formation Lab, the capacity building support team Jody talked about earlier, they have worked with Serena to help her start her own business so she can continue to help us and others evaluate ideas for incorporating the Indigenous, traditional, ecological, and cultural knowledge for a variety of projects. We've also been engaged with our current project site Neighbors, and we've received a lot of valuable feedback there too, through a number of surveys, a virtual open house last September, and through our monthly public site advisory group meetings that we've hosted over the past 18 months. With their feedback, we developed a good neighbor agreement to document our commitments and help mitigate concerns such as lighting and noise and traffic. We recognize that many of the neighbors would rather the project not be in their community, but this agreement is a reflection of the concerns we have heard that we can control, such as designing a filtration facility that adapts well to the community, minimizing impacts during construction, looking at how we can continue to be a good neighbor during operations, and most importantly, keeping the community informed. That document is available on our website, and our team is using that to help make decisions throughout the design, construction, operations of the filtration facility. So one of the other ways that we're collecting community input is through public opinion research. This is also an opportunity to give voice to community members that may be less engaged or less vocal in our more public forums. We last conducted this research in 2019, and in March this year, we completed a telephone and online public opinion survey to get updated understanding of the residents' awareness and information needs for both the corrosion control and the filtration project. This research is objective and statistically valid data so that it helps us better understand the differences in opinions between demographics such as race and gender and education and household income. We also have a second phase of this work that will include a series of focus groups, including those that may have language or disability barriers. But for this initial phase, we surveyed 600 residents, including renters and homeowners, to hear from a cross-section of water users, not just those who directly pay our water bill. We also oversampled Portlanders from communities of color to provide us a sufficient sample size to analyze responses from our communities. The total results, though, are statistically weighted to match the demographic profile of Portland. The full report is available on our website, but I did want to share a few of the results we heard from this work and note some comparisons from the efforts in 2019. So one of the first questions we asked was about project awareness, which has gone up from 16 to 25%. While there's still room for improvement here, a 9% increase is actually pretty good, especially when you consider all our city has experienced over the past year and all of the information that has been competing for our attention. When we asked if project costs were more important or rates, 85% favor information about rates compared to 12% that were interested in total project costs. Most people also favor information about low income programs. And what we found interesting about that is that most Portlanders want to ensure that there are programs available to low income households, even if their bill is affordable for them, which leads me to the next slide about affordability. Specifically, we asked which of the following 3 statements comes closest to your point of view. Combining the 2 options at the top, about 79% found their drinking water to be affordable, which is very similar to what we heard in 2019. We do recognize, though, that 13% who do struggle to pay their water bill is certainly not an insignificant number, especially when the historically underrepresented communities that are disproportionately impacted. So we also know, though, as Jody mentioned, that when infrastructure fails to protect, those impacts are also concentrated on the most vulnerable. So as we move forward with this project, we want to be engaging more with these groups, not only to increase awareness, but also to make sure they understand and know the options that we have available to ensure water is affordable for everyone. So now I will turn it over to Jody to talk more about affordability.
Thank you, Bonita. I think one of the large celebrations on this project in the last year was the successful application and granting of the Wiffy Loan. That was one of the key, or has been one of the key factors in how we are working to make this project affordable and manage the cost. In addition to managing the cost itself, the loan gives us some fantastic rates and terms that enable us to reduce the rate impact. And as you can see on the screen, this is just a 10-year projection of the benefit of the Wiffy Loan towards the rates. Go ahead and go to the next slide. And then in addition to that, the Water Bureau has been nationally recognized for its affordability program, but that does not mean that there is not more that we could do and that we continue to do and focus on. We do have multiple financial assistance programs with bill discounts, crisis assistance, leak repair, payment plans, emergency rental assistance. And recognizing these large projects and the capital program we have in front of us, we are continuing to be very focused on maintaining these affordability programs and continuing to reach out to make sure that those who need to take advantage of them or know about them have that opportunity to make sure that they are best supported. Next slide. And then just a brief look at going forward. It may be a little quiet for you all in the next year on this project, but it will not be quiet for us. We will be continuing to work hot and heavy on designing the facility and the pipelines, working towards that 60% and continuing to develop, get additional cost estimates towards the guaranteed maximum prices in 2020, or guaranteed maximum price in construction in 2023. It will be a big year for us also because we will be submitting land use applications for those projects in early 2022 in Multnomah County and Clackamas County. It's not on here, but we will be bringing corrosion control online, which is also a big achievement for us in this upcoming year. As we continue with the design and the land use application and all of our outreach to the community, we are, again, just dedicated to continued cost management, balancing the performance and reliability goals of the program. We are, as we said, committed to maintaining affordability, using and maximizing the Wiffy Loan to maximize those benefits for customers. And we will be back before you at the very least next summer with another update. With that, I think I turn it back to Gabe.
Thanks, Jody. And just before we close, I wanted to get back to Commissioner Hardesty. You had asked a question about the improved corrosion control and that $3 million and as a percentage. And like Jody said, we don't do math in public. It doesn't lead to good results, but I have a pretty incredible team. And so they've already gotten the answer on that. I'll tell you, it's 16.7% of the total project value and 31.6% of the hard construction costs. So we can give you all the breakdown of that information, but I wanted to get back to you on that as soon as I had it.
Thank you so much, Director. And before I open it up for questions, let me just say that there's no surprise to anybody that I was one of the biggest critics of this project. And I just put every challenge I could imagine in front of you and your team. And I just kept telling you, I was just gonna make you prove it. And let me tell you here publicly today, you have proved it. I am so impressed with the work of Jody and Bonita and your leadership, Director Somner. You are doing exactly what you promised me you would do. You are doing your annual reports back to us. You are showing us where you're having success and where you're not as successful as you would like to be, but what your plan is to get to complete success. I could not be prouder of the work that you and your team have done. So I just want to start there because, I always want to challenge people to do better than we think we can. And I think your team has proven that you can raise to challenges of that magnitude. So thank you all.
Thank you. That is so meaningful to me, and I know to the team. You've taken up space in our heads. We hear your voice as we go through these issues, and I have to again thank Commissioner Mapps has come in to this project, hit the ground running, and helped us, and really challenged us as well to make sure that we are following up on the council priorities, that we're aligned. So I think, it makes it easier to fulfill our goals and make sure that we are focused where we need to be. And it is a lot of work. It's some different ways of thinking. And that's a good challenge for us to do. But I can tell you that if we can do this, then others can too. So we're happy to lead the way.
You're absolutely right. There's nothing like surpassing the challenges that are put in front of you. And this project in and of itself was a huge challenge just because of the magnitude of the project. And so I'm going to ask if there are any questions from the council. Not seeing any questions from the council. Kaylin, has anyone signed up to testify on this issue?
Madam President, this is a report.
It is a report. Yes, it is. In that case, I am happy to accept yes, Commissioner Matt, a motion.
Why don't I was going to, number one, I wanted to start out by just thanking Water Bureau staff for an excellent presentation and just really stepping up to what I truly think is a once in a generation challenge for the city of Portland. It's going to keep generations of future Portlanders healthy and safe and protect our environment. I really appreciate the kind words from Commissioner Hardesty. We're really excited to see this one evolve and grow over time. And with that, I would like to move that we accept this report.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I will second.
Been moved by Commissioner Mapps and second by Commissioner Ryan. Keelan, please call the roll.
Ryan.
Yes, thank you for this presentation. It's actually very interesting, and you've also been really good about briefing us along the way. So, and I also want to acknowledge the work that you're doing in contracting. I like the term that you use, graduate up, because that's the truth. A lot of people don't realize that you've got to really look upstream. And so the fact that we're seeing some good trends finally with apprenticeship work, that's awesome. That's good. That's exactly what needs to happen. But then when you have the ownership there, you can hopefully, even within a long project, you can see somebody get enough hours to graduate up to that journey level. So with big projects like this, that's exactly the way that you do the upstream work when it comes to equity and contracting. So I vote aye.
Mapps.
Aye.
Hardesty.
Again, thank you, Director Somner and your incredible team, Jody and Bonita. And thank you. Someone earlier actually addressed the issue of whether or not we had lead in our water. Thank you for that, because we have communication a lot where people imply we have lead in our water. And so I learned something new today, which is we have lead in our pipes, but not in our water supply. And so thank you for clarifying the record, and I'm very happy to vote aye. The report has been adopted. Thank you all. Excellent presentation, excellent work. I can clearly see the absolute commitment each of you have to not only doing this project within budget, but also making sure that equity is a component every step of the way. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So We have completed item 500. Kaylin, would you read item 501, please?
Commissioner,
Wait,
or
I
Madam
think that's
President.
it.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, Commissioner Ryan.
yeah, I think because that's time certain, correct?
You are
Isn't
right.
that still time certain? Maybe we could go to the one that was pulled out of consent, 487.
That is a very good idea. Yes, the next one is time certain at, yeah, we have.
Oh, but wait, 487 is an asterisk, so we need 4 people.
That is correct.
So my idea was actually garbage. Yeah.
Well, your idea was an excellent one.
It had good intentions. Let's
Yes,
find one
it
without
did.
an asterisk. I think we need to take a break.
I was just going to recommend that, Commissioner Ryan. I recommend that we take a 10-minute break and come back for our 3 p.m. time certain item.
All right.
Thank you.
Recording
So that's 2
stopped.
minutes.
Session. And again, thank you, Commissioner Hardesty, for taking over my duties while I had another engagement. We are now at item 501, time certain.
Accept Portland's Housing Bond Oversight Committee 2020 Progress Report.
Commissioner Ryan.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Welcome back. Thank you to our Bond Oversight Committee members for the time, the effort, the expertise you bring to the oversight of Portland's housing bond. Your report ensures the city is investing bonds wisely and in a timely manner in the way Portland voters intended. This past year, we have reached and in several areas exceeded our goals to create new affordable homes amid a growing housing and houselessness crisis, which has been, of course, accelerated during the global pandemic. Director Shannon Callahan and members of the Bond Oversight Committee will present the 2020 Progress Report for Portland's Housing Bond. I'm going to turn it over to you, Director Callahan.
Thank you, Commissioner. Good afternoon, Mayor and Commissioners. Shannon Callahan of the Portland Housing Bureau. I am pleased today to introduce two members of our Bond Oversight Committee who will present the report for the calendar year 2020. So although you have seen much activity happen regarding the bond since that point, the report they're about to present to you is an overview of the year 2020. And with that, I would like to, Keelan, could you put up the slide deck for me, please, if you have it? And with that, I would like to, and if you wouldn't mind advancing one slide, introduce you to two of our esteemed Bond Oversight Committee members. The Bond Oversight Committee is a 5-member committee. And today we will be joined by our chair, Todd Struble, and member at large, Annalisa Curler. And Todd, I believe you're on the line to do the next portion of the slide deck.
Yes. Good afternoon. My name is Todd Struble, and I serve as the chair of the Bond Oversight Committee, and I am the Community Development Director at Apano, and I use he, him pronouns. As outlined in our report to Council, our committee has reviewed progress on 3 areas of oversight. The first was monitoring how bond activities and investments align to the bond framework. And at our quarterly meetings, we review progress being made on the project's awarded bond funds and the number of units completed or in progress, and the extent to which we are on track to reach our end goals. Next slide, please. This table summarizes our progress, indicating that we have projects complete and in process to meet and exceed our goals. The units achieved in teal reflects our 2 existing projects, the Ellington and East Burnside, and the 10 bond projects that were awarded bond funds in 2019. So by keeping close watch over our progress, we're using the information to better strategize how to invest remaining funds in the upcoming years. Next slide, please. In addition to the closely following progress on our production goals, the committee has also been reviewing where new units are being created to ensure they're meeting the intent of increasing opportunity, community partnerships, and preventing displacement, as outlined in our framework. As described in the 2020 progress report, 82% of the 14,020 new units constructed or planned for construction are located in high opportunity areas. These new homes are located in areas with access to transportation, jobs, open spaces, high quality schools, services, and amenities. 25%, or 373 of the units purchased, constructed or planned are located in areas at high risk for gentrification. And 100% of the projects include permanent supportive housing units. Let's see, next slide, please. And PHB raised its equity and contracting targets for bond projects with the goal of reaching 30% of construction costs for utilization of certified disadvantaged minority, women, and emerging small businesses, or service and disabled veteran. That's quite the acronym. DMWESB-SDV contractors, exceeding the city's goal of 20%. All bond projects also established a new target of 20% of DMSESB-SDV utilization for professional services such as architects, surveyors, and engineers. The first project to begin construction in 2020, Crescent Court, is on track to exceed these targets. PHB has partnered with Prosper Portland's Community Opportunities and Enhancement Programs to expand participation of women and people of color in construction trades. And with that, I will transition over to Annalise for Oversight Area 2.
Thank you so much, Todd. If you want to advance to the next slide.
Hey, Todd, before you move on, Commissioner Hardesty had a comment or a question.
Thank you, Mayor. Todd, if we could go back one slide. Do you have the breakdown of these contractors that were utilized in this bond, in the Portland housing bond?
I do not. I would have to refer to staff.
Commissioner, this is Shannon Callahan of the Portland Housing Bureau. As most of the projects are just beginning, new projects are just beginning construction, we do not have up-to-date information that would give you a view of what has happened in the past, but we are tracking all of these projects all the way through to ensure that they are on track to meet and exceed their goals.
Thank you. I appreciate that. But as we all know, that just reaching the 20% or 30% goals doesn't actually paint the whole picture. So for me, the demographic breakdown is really important, that it is spread out and we're providing opportunity for minority and women-owned firms. So as soon as you have that data, I'd be very interested in it. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Are there any more questions, or I can go ahead and get started? If you want to actually go back a slide for me. Good afternoon, Mayor Wheeler and Portland City Council members. My name is Annalisa Curler, and I am a Portland Housing Bond Oversight Committee member. I use she, her pronouns, and I am pleased to be before you this afternoon. It has been a true honor and pleasure to serve on this Oversight Committee and contribute to this critical work. I am here today to discuss Oversight Area 2, which is creating community. As an oversight committee, transparency and collaboration with community partners is among our guiding principles. The Oversight Committee ensures housing stakeholders and the Portland communities are kept informed and have opportunities to provide feedback. We work closely with PHB staff and project development teams to communicate progress through reports, newsletters, and meetings. We also seek to engage the community to inform the implementation and development of the bond projects. Next slide, please. The Portland Housing Bond prioritizes communities disproportionately impacted by the housing crisis. In particular, working in close partnership with homeless service providers, culturally specific agencies, and other community organizations, we have worked to create housing for specific priority communities, including communities of color, families, including families with children, immigrant and refugee and intergenerational households, households experiencing homelessness or at imminent risk of experiencing homelessness, and households facing displacement. Next slide, please. We also wanted to share with you some information about who currently lives in housing funded by the Portland Housing Bond. As of 2020, we have 2 projects that are providing affordable housing to Portlanders. That's the Ellington and the East Burnside apartments. We collect demographic data at least annually to track how well bond projects are serving the priority communities outlined in the framework. I do just want to note in the households by income level, you do see that there is 6% of the population that is above the 60% AMI threshold. And this is because it represents the tenants that were living at the Ellington when the property was acquired. We fully anticipate that these units will convert to rent restricted units upon turnover. Next slide, please. We have the privilege of hearing from at least 2 project teams every quarter. They present at our Bond Oversight Committee meetings. And as a reminder, these meetings are always open to the public. These development teams talk about progress on their projects and they share their successes and their current challenges. The discussion topics range from financing to permitting and construction to partnerships for residents and supportive services. The project teams continuously work with community stakeholders to inform project designs, leasing strategies, and resident services programs. This important community feedback has resulted in items like additional laundry rooms, community spaces, outdoor amenities, and increased bedroom sizes. For the bond projects that are already opened, such as the Ellington and the East Burnside apartments, staff engages residents to understand the resources, programming, and improvements needed at each property. Next slide, please. In addition, our bond-funded projects work closely with culturally specific organizations and mental health organizations. 2/3 of the projects have partnered with culturally specific agencies such as the Native American Rehabilitation Association, the Native American Youth and Family Center, Familias en Acción, and the Immigrant and Refugee Community Organization. And these organizations help provide supportive services and referrals for our projects. Additionally, our supportive housing developers have partnered with clinical mental health and addiction services partners. These include Cascadia Behavioral Healthcare, Central City Concern, LifeWorks Northwest, and New Narrative, which is formerly Luke Dorff. I am now going to turn it over to Alan Lazo, who will be discussing fiscal accountability with you.
Thanks, Annalise, and good afternoon, Mayor and Commissioners. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm Alan Lazo, the Executive Director at the Fair Housing Council of Oregon, and I'm also a Bond Oversight Committee member. And I have the distinct pleasure, because I am a recovering accountant and am perpetually financially curious, to bring forward the 3rd focus of our report, which is maintaining fiscal accountability. So if you go to the next slide, please, and then so we'll be reviewing the expenditures and ensuring financial accountability. We recognize is one of the core responsibilities of the Bond Oversight Committee. We want to make sure that bond dollars spent are clearly and separately tracked. And if you go to the next slide, we'll take a look at where those finances are currently. So these figures, as of December 2020, $55.2 million of bond funds have been expended. Additionally, $145.5 million in bond funds have been committed or awarded to 10 projects that you all probably talked about earlier through the 2019 bond opportunity solicitation, the big solicitation for projects that went out last year. Totals for reserved and remaining funds will continue to change as more of those projects close and start to move into the construction phases. And so we'll be looking at funds for future projects that includes the remaining funds, as well as the interest that's being earned and credit back that we receive, which totaled approximately $25 million at the end of 2020 so far. A more accurate final total, if you will, for remaining funds will be available as we move towards the end of this year and start to get an understanding of where we are in remaining funds. As you know, per the bond, 7% of the total bonds have been allocated for an administrative allowance. That was, again, as I mentioned, part of what was approved by voters in the 2016 bond measure itself. These admin expenses will be adjusted as projects, again, begin to move into the construction phases and are completed, and those will again begin to accurately reflect the costs of bond implementation overall over the life of the implementation of the bond. We do have an independent auditor, Harvey M. Rose Associates, that is currently in the process of completing a full financial audit report of bond expenditures. And with that, I will pass it back to the team at the Housing Bureau.
This is Shannon Callahan again of the Portland Housing Bureau. Thank you, Alan. Thank you, Todd. And thank you, Annalisa, for your service. We just wanted to, we actually may have actually completed our presentation a bit early, but I wanted to make sure that Council had an opportunity to ask any questions and about our progress to date.
Very good, colleagues. Any questions? And if not, this is a report. I'll accept a motion.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion from Commissioner Ryan, a second from Commissioner Hardesty. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Ryan.
Yes, thank you, Housing Bureau staff that put so much time into this report under the leadership of Director Callahan. And thank you again to the members of the Bond Oversight Committee, namely Todd, Annalise, and Alan, who are here this afternoon. This year's report highlights a lot of progress the Portland Housing Bureau has made toward fulfilling the promise made to voters despite the challenges of 2020. And this year's report also reflects a tremendous collaboration among our funding partners at the Joint Office for Homeless Services, at Home Forward, as well as our development partners' ability to leverage, keyword leveraging bond investments on an average of 2.6 times with the additional resources. All of this while leading with racial equity to increase economic and housing opportunities for communities of color and other vulnerable populations. This program is one of the many steps we are taking as a city to align with our community's priorities, addressing houselessness, creating more permanently affordable housing in underserved areas to prevent displacement and create more housing solutions that meet the needs of families. I vote aye.
Hardesty.
Thank you, Director Callahan, and thank you very much, the Portland Housing Bond Oversight Committee, for your thoroughness and keeping us on track to achieve the goal of having housing in Portland that people can afford to live in. I vote aye.
Maps.
Aye.
Wheeler.
Thank you, Commissioner Ryan, for bringing this forward, Director Callahan for your great work on this, and of course, the Housing Bond Oversight Committee for continuing to be the eyes and the ears of the public and to hold all of us collectively accountable for a program that was ultimately from the community and supported by the community. I'm very happy to support the work up to this point. Good progress. I vote aye. The report's accepted. Colleagues, maybe this is more of a question for staff than it is for anybody else. So we wrap that up very quickly. We have another 45 minutes. Sorry, Commissioner Ryan, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I was thinking we could now do 493.
Well, here's the question I have.
No, that's the wrong one.
Yeah, is it 494 and 495 and 487 are the ones I showed?
487 is the one because people from the Housing Bureau are here right now. So.
They are here. So that was the item pulled off the consent agenda. Is that correct? Okay, why don't we do, Keelan, can you read 487, please? And then if we can get staff here for 494 and 495, that would be fantastic. And let me just see who. So that's also Housing Bureau. Shannon, are you still on?
Commissioner, our whole team is here and ready to do all three items, but I know Prosper is also here for the first item, Kimberly and Tony Barnes. So it would be great if we could do that first and then we'll go.
Is that 494, Shannon, you're talking about?
I think it's
487, right?
487.
Okay, let's do this then. Let's do 487, then we'll do 494 and 495, and then we will just be being incredibly efficient. So Keelan, please call 487, please.
Authorize intergovernmental agreement with Prosper Portland in support of the ongoing implementation of housing functions at the Housing Bureau and economic opportunity functions at Prosper Portland.
Commissioner Ryan.
Yes, thank you. Prosper Portland and the Portland Housing Bureau share important responsibilities in providing the highest level of services to Portland residents. Prosper Portland provides economic development services, while the Housing Bureau provides access to affordable housing. These agencies provide funding oversight to each other to ensure the most effective programs possible. Director Callahan is here to present the ordinance. Please take it away, Director Callahan.
I believe Director Callahan will.
Good afternoon. I was going to delegate this actually to my to our great Deputy Director, Molly Rogers, if you don't mind.
Thank you, Director Callahan. Good afternoon, Mayor and Commissioners. For the record, I am Molly Rogers, and I'm the Deputy Director of the Portland Housing Bureau. I'm here to introduce the intergovernmental agreement between the Portland Housing Bureau and Prosper Portland, which has been in existence since 2009, when PHB was first formed. Since this time, PHB and Prosper Portland have shared responsibilities and funding for affordable housing and economic development activities. Prosper Portland administers tax increment financing for the urban renewal areas and provides 45% to PHB for affordable housing developments. PHB administers the Federal Community Development Block Grant Fund, of which Prosper Portland spends a portion on microenterprise assistance and adult and youth workforce development. And last year, we added a new activity related to Prosper's Community Opportunities for Enhancement Program, or COEP for short. And the goals of the COEP are to increase the number of people of color and women in trades and to remove barriers for construction firms owned by people of color and women so that they can successfully participate in public contracting. So through the COEP, subcontractors on PHB's Portland Housing Bond funded projects have access to service providers who can help them achieve or exceed, ideally exceed, their equity and contracting and workforce and training goals. This IGA outlines detailed scopes of work for these shared responsibilities according to the funding levels already approved by Council in the fiscal year 21-22 adopted budget. And this year's IGA does not represent any changes in our scopes of work, activities, or relationship, and this is really just an annual update of our funding amounts. I'm here joined today by Kimberly Brannon and Tony Barnes from Prosper Portland, and we'd be happy to take your questions.
Colleagues, any questions? All right, very good. This is, do we have any testimony, Keelan, on this? This is an emergency ordinance.
No one signed up for this item, Mayor.
All right, well, it's been a long day, so I don't blame people. Keelan, please call the roll.
Ryan.
Aye.
Hardesty,
Aye.
Maps,
Aye.
Wheeler, aye.
Wheeler,
That's a new one, Keelan. That is a new one. Now I'm doing your job and not very well. I vote aye. Thank you. The ordinance is adopted. Next item, please. 494.
494, adopt and authorize the submission of the 2021-2025 consolidated plan and the FY 2021-22 action plan application for the Community Development Block Grant, Home Investment Partnership, Emergency Solutions Grant, and Housing Opportunities for Persons with AIDS programs to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development.
This is an emergency ordinance. Commissioner Ryan.
Yes. Colleagues, the Consolidated Plan 2021-25 is our application to HUD for federal funding for 4 affordable housing and community development programs, Community Development Block Grant, Home Housing Opportunities for Persons with AIDS, and Emergency Shelter Grants. The Consolidated Plan represents the Portland Consortium of the City of Portland, City of Gresham, and Multnomah County. This City of Portland is the lead agency. The Consolidated Plan includes a market analysis and needs assessment of both housing and non-housing community needs. There is a strategic plan to address the consortium needs over a 5-year plan period, and there is an individual 1-year action plan for each consortium partners. By submitting this plan to HUD, the Portland Consortium is certifying that the funded projects and programs will further fair housing and will serve the low-income consortium residents who experience disproportionate housing and non-housing needs. With that, I will turn this over to Director Callahan from the Portland Housing Bureau to present the consolidated plan and the accompanying action plan.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Commissioner Ryan, Mayor and Commissioners. Shannon Callahan of the Portland Housing Bureau. This is the second item from the Housing Bureau that you're hearing this afternoon that effectuates the city's adopted budget. The item that will follow later this afternoon also does the same. As you have heard, the consolidated plan is serves as our application to the Housing and Urban Development for the federal funding that we and our jurisdictional partners in Multnomah County receive. In the interest of time, Dr. Krishnan and I are going to go through this presentation as quickly as possible. Before I turn it over to Dr. Krishnan, I would like to thank her for her service on behalf of not only Portlanders, but of the other jurisdictional partners in pulling this entire report, detailed demographics, and grant application effectively to HUD over the last year. And with that, Dr. Krishnan, if you would go through a brief PowerPoint or abbreviated PowerPoint for council so they know what they're approving or being asked to approve.
Good afternoon. And thank you, Shannon, and good afternoon, Mayor Wheeler. Good afternoon, commissioners. For the record, I am Dr. Uma Krishnan, staff lead for the Consolidated Plan Action Plan. And we will quickly run through this, but I wanted to make sure that I mentioned this, that I would like to use this privilege and opportunity to share with this council and the community some basics of the Consolidated Plan, the highlights from the plan, the allocations, and over to our finance director to briefly go over what are the projects. And I think in the interest of time, we might be moving to slide number 5. Thank you. So the one before that, which kind of, and I think we made this choice for this slide because the plan itself, and it's a voluminous plan. It is not a riveting document and it's not a page turner. And I think it's important exactly for the opposite reason. Every page kind of covers either the needs in our community or it talks about the market analysis or our strategy on how we would address that. So every page kind of stops and makes us think about it. It's a good 250, 300 page document. And if you ever have a lot of time, please do go through it. But unlike the reports in the morning, I think the selling point is it's an application. It will get us the 15 million we really need for this community. And what you see is an illustration that kind of talks about how this plan comes together. And my colleague, Michelle Helm, put this together from the data team. So it's a process and a report. It sort of begins like everything else, citizen participation and consult from, area experts. And then we do an extended needs assessment, which looks at the special data set called the CHASC, Comprehensive Housing Affordability Strategy. Then based on that, we come up with the strategy. Then the implementation guide is the action plan, and we come to CAPER, which is an annual look back, and we report to the we report to HUD. So it's a process that comes with accountability and transparency. If you could move to slide number 7. Thank you very much. So what are the 4 federal programs? We have the, the age-old back to the 70s from 1974, the Community Block Development Block Grant, the CDBG for short. So each of the consortium members, the City of Portland, Gresham, and Multnomah County, which actually covers the unincorporated parts and small cities like Maywood Park, Fairview, Wood Village. So we all 3 of us, we get our share of CDBG. The Home Investment Partnership, we have another consortium, which is distinct from the Con-Plan consortium. And we get the home, we as the lead, we receive the Con-Plan, and we have a formula-based sharing of this. Then we have the Emergency Solutions Grants Program, the ESG, and the HAWA. The city is the direct recipient, and it's essentially a pass-through to our partners, Joint Office of Homeless Services. If you could move to slide number 9, please. Thank you very much. So what you see is at the heart of our strategy. We have, based on all the needs analysis, the market analysis, we come up with these needs. And because it's the 6th plan, these needs are not new, but these are priority news. And though they have been numbered 1, 2, 3, they all have high priority. So we have affordable housing choice, basic services and homeless prevention, intervention. We have community and economic development. These are our high need priorities. Each have an associated goal. And for this round, we kind of kept the goals intact, but made sure that we reflect the city and our community's commitment. So you would see, in addition to seeing increase and preserve affordable housing choice in ways that promote. So we made sure that we heard the community and the consultants and added this, that promote racial equity. Number 2, reduce and prevent homelessness in ways that can mitigate overrepresentation of BIPOC communities. 3, improve livability through infrastructure, employment, and anti-poverty strategies. So long story short, we have these goals, and every project we allocate funds to have to tie back to these goals. And the goals have been determined based on our needs. If we could move to slide 9. What is it? Oh, action plan. So that's the one before that. Thank you very much. And then I'll hand it over for the allocations. The action plan is the implementation guide. We tell HUD, you know what, this is our strategy for 5 years. For the first year, you give us the fund. This is what we will allocate the projects. And projects can nestle activities. And then once they review everything, we get they release the grant agreement. And Mayor Wheeler would certainly be familiar with hundreds of forms that he has signed for me. So thank you. I'm handing over the next slide to Mike Johnson.
Thank you, Dr. Christian. Mike actually can't join us. If we could advance one more slide and then we'll conclude. So essentially, as I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, the document also, besides serving as our application, represents what is in this year's adopted budget. And what you will see here are those breakouts that Dr. Christian just explained to you and the amount of money in each program that the City of Portland is receiving. In the interest of time, we will conclude our presentation, though we have much more material and are happy to answer your questions either now or at a later point.
I'm not seeing any questions at this particular junction. Director Callahan.
Great. Well, that completely concludes our presentation, and we would ask for your support to apply for our federal funding.
All right, very good. Keelan, do we have any public testimony? This is an emergency ordinance.
I don't believe anyone is on the call for this item.
All right, very good. Last call, if anybody wants to raise their hand for public testimony, please call the roll.
Ryan.
Yes, your words, not a page turner, but someone has to turn the pages and someone's got to dig into the details. And thank you, Dr. Krishnan, for that great report. And thank you for your service. I vote aye.
Hardesty.
Thank you. I vote aye.
Maps.
Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye. The ordinance is approved. Item 495, also an emergency ordinance from this morning's agenda.
Authorize 18 subrecipient contracts for the provision of services in support of providing affordable housing in the amount of $5,141,000.
Commissioner Ryan.
Yes, thank you. Portland Housing Bureau provides a variety of housing services for low to moderate income community members through subrecipient contracts with nonprofit organizations. The services include emergency home repair, fair housing advocacy and education, home ownership counseling and education, relocation assistance, legal aid services for low-income renters, risk mitigation funds to permanent supportive housing providers, and renter education and advocacy. This year, a total of 18 contracts will provide a little over $5.1 million to funding to 18 organizations to carry out these community services on behalf of the Bureau. In conjunction with the HUD-related consolidated planning process, a series of hearings and public meetings were held to ensure input from a broad range of community members as to those urgent needs of Portland's low-income residents. Funding allocations also reflect the goals outlined in the Northeast Housing Strategy. With that, I'll turn over to Matthew Scheipold and Dana Shepard to present the Housing Bureau's subrecipient programs. Take it away, Matthew.
Good afternoon, commissioners and mayor. My name is Dana Shepard, Housing Program Manager for the Housing Bureau, what's called the Neighborhood Housing Preservation Team. And I will be, and if we can just queue up the PowerPoint presentation, you can go ahead and get that started. Thank you very much. All right, next page, please. All right, so I will be speaking about 9 of the 18 contracts listed in the master ordinance, and those come from the Neighborhood Housing Preservation Team. And those fall under 2 programs. That's the Homeowner Access Program, and that you can see here, I'll just try to be brief. It just provides access to homeowners with pre and post homeownership counseling and education, and then the home repair and retention programs. It serves to prevent displacement of longtime community residents, and that is through home repair grants and home repair loan programs. Next slide, please. All right, here you will see a list or actually logos from the community-based organizations that provide the services to the community. 4 of which you'll see here are not listed on the master ordinance, and that is just because the master ordinance only includes the contracts that are above $100,000. If you can go to the next slide, please. Right here, you will see the annual targets reported for 2021 for homebuyer education and counseling is 975 households. For homebuyer subsidies, that's the down payment assistance, is 45 households in the year. And then those receiving home repair grants is 430 households. Just to let you all know, we've reported the 2021 annual targets, as it is seeming that we will need to make some adjustments for 21 and 22 just given the economic climate and due to the pandemic, it may be some additional need for foreclosure services. And at this time, I'll go ahead and pass it on to Matthew Shopple.
Thanks, Dana. Good afternoon, Mayor and members of Council. For the record, Matthew Schaubold with the Portland Housing Bureau. Can you go to the next slide, please? So I'm here to speak to the service contracts that are held within the Rental Services Office. The Rental Services Office is a program area within the Housing Bureau that administers your local landlord, tenant, and fair housing regulations, as well as a body of contracted services for both landlords, property managers, and renters around the city. Next slide, please. So here are some of the logos of some of our partners in the Rental Services Office. In total, we have over a dozen contracts with various organizations providing various suite of services that are focused on general education, advocacy, and then direct services in the spheres of fair housing law and landlord-tenant law. Next slide, please. Similar to our homeownership programs that Dana just spoke about, the contracts for your authorization today are those above $100,000. And in general, these services are providing either fair housing education and testing and enforcement, or landlord-tenant legal representation, or habitability, relocation, and remediation services, or mediation services between, voluntary mediation services between landlords and tenants, as well as general education services for the public. Next slide, please. So here on the previous slide, on this slide, you're seeing some of our landlord, tenant, and fair housing outcomes for the contracts that are before you today. Generally the generally available public services around technical assistance and education, we're serving in the hundreds on a per contract basis. And then the kind of the more intensive direct client assistance, such as legal representation, fair housing enforcement, mold remediation, we are able to serve with our current contract levels, usually between around 20 to 80 individuals, depending on the service and depending on the contract. Next slide. So with that, we are here to answer any specific questions that any of the members of council have.
Colleagues, any questions on this item? Seeing none, Keelan, any public testimony?
No one is on the call for this item.
Please call the roll.
Ryan.
Thank you, Dana, and thank you, Matthew, and what a wonderful list of partners. I vote aye.
Hardesty.
Aye.
Maps.
Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye. The ordinance is adopted. Thank you. We'll now move to item 502 on the afternoon agenda, time certain 3:30 p.m.
Amend the zoning map, Title 33 Planning and Zoning, and Title 32 Signs and Related Regulations to implement the Design Overlay Zone Amendments project to update the process and tools of the Design Overlay Zone and related code sections.
All right, first we're going to hear a word about today's proceeding from our city attorney, and then we'll turn it over to Sandra Wood to explain the amended documents to us.
Mayor, this is Lauren King. I'm on the call. I don't think that there's anything from the city attorney in terms of procedure that you need to hear right now.
All right, good. Thank you. Then today, folks, what we're doing is we're voting on the amended documents for the Design Overlay Zone Amendments project. As you know, it's all called DOZA for short. Sandra, why don't you explain where we are in terms of the amended documents?
That sounds great. Good afternoon, commissioners and mayor. My name is Sandra Wood. I'm with the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability. This is the second to last time we'll be here for the DOZA project. Yay, I see all those smiles. Why? So today is a pretty quick agenda item. What we're asking of council is that you amend the documents that reflect the amendments that you already made. So you might recall that we were last here on June 10th. At the second public hearing for DOZA. And at that time, council approved 5 amendments to the recommended draft to city code and 1 amendment to the ordinance. So what we did for staff after that is go back and amend all the documents to reflect what the council's wishes are. And so we have 4 documents that we distributed on Thursday. They were attached to the council agenda today. The first one is the amended ordinance itself. We added the directive as you asked us to for character statements. Then we needed to amend the findings report. Those are all the findings against the comprehensive plan and the statewide planning goals. Then we amended the staff report, which is volume 1, and we amended the code, which is volume 2, to reflect your amendments. So what we're looking for is for a commissioner to make a motion today, and I think we can do it all in one motion. And if one of you could just make a motion to amend the ordinance, findings, and recommended drafts of volume 1 and 2, as shown in the amendment package that was distributed on June 17th, 2021.
So moved.
And I'll second. Commissioner Hardesty moves to amend the ordinance findings and recommended draft of volumes 1 and 2 as shown in the amendment package distributed on June 17th, 2021. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Ryan,
Aye.
Hardesty,
Aye.
Maps,
Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye. This motion now passes to second reading. The item is continued to June 30th, 2021 at 10:30 a.m. time certain. Again, that's June 30th, 2021, 10:30 a.m. time certain. Thank you. That concludes this item. Colleagues, we're getting there. Our next item is a time certain at 4 p.m. We have nothing else to do in the interim, so we'll give you about 20 minutes of your life back. We will be in recess till 4 p.m.
Mr. Mayor, have
Recording stopped.
I'm sorry? In session. Keelan, could you please read items 503 and 504 together, please?
Accept a grant in the amount of $439,950 from Federal Transit Administration Public Transportation Research and Demonstration Grant for Portland Streetcar's Healthy and Reliable Transit Project. And item 504, amend contract with Portland Streetcar Inc. to extend the agreement terms through June 30, 2023, and add $1,982,133 in compensation.
Thank you. Commissioner Hardesty.
Thank you, Mayor. Please join me in welcoming Congressman Earl Blumenauer back to Portland City Council today. Congressman Blumenauer is a former city commissioner and is the longest serving member of Oregon's congressional delegation. The congressman is here today to speak about the legacy of Portland Streetcar as we approach the 20th anniversary of its opening in 2001. Congressman Blumenauer, Earl, has been a long time champion of building walkable, dense neighborhoods supported by high quality transit as a solution to address our region's climate and equity challenges. For the past 2 decades, Portland Streetcar has supported access to affordable housing, parks, services, and major employment centers with 100% electric transit. Portland's success has led to a national movement to use transit and modern streetcars to organize, develop, and convene stakeholders to solve the issues of the day. Congressman Blumenauer has led the charge as a member of the powerful Ways and Means Committee in Congress. Please join me in welcoming Congressman Earl Blumenauer today.
Well, thank you, Commissioner, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. It's a pleasure for me to be able to join you. Some of my fondest memories are as a member of the Portland City Council and the Commission of Public Works and working on these projects. It brings back fond memories, and it's part of our future as well as our past. I'm pleased to recognize and applaud the ongoing work that the council, PBOT, and the Portland Streetcar has done. One of the things I'm most proud of is helping Portland launch the modern streetcar movement. There was one streetcar system in New Orleans that predates us, but this was the modern streetcar, the first initiative that helped reintroduce the modern streetcar apart from the Charles Street line. It was something that I was very pleased to work with on Portland, our Department of Transportation, and our citizen board, amazing citizen board. Sometimes like John Carroll, complained that he accepted a 20-month assignment that lasted 20 years in terms of his volunteer leadership with the Streetcar Committee. It is an area that Portland can take great pride. We were the model that I used for the Small Starts program that enabled us, for example, to extend the streetcar to the east side, and then ultimately to connect the loop over the Telecom Bridge. Every year at the Railvolution Conference, which Portland helped start and continues to play a big role in, we convene people from across the country, having 1,000, 1,500 people who deal with these innovations. And the streetcar has been front and center for the last 25 years. From Tucson to Seattle, Washington, D.C., Kansas City, amongst many others. And it can trace its lineage to what you, as a Portland City Council, and working with the program and our citizen volunteers, were able to initiate. We're working with people in Los Angeles and in Brooklyn with new innovative streetcar programs demonstrating the power of this concept and the practical application of using this technology for revitalization. The modern streetcar is low cost, low impact. It illustrates the impact of a trip not taken. I've heard from a number of people along that initial streetcar line who were stunned at the impact it had. They would have designed some of their projects differently because they wouldn't have needed as much parking. A trip not taken. The Portland streetcar was highlighted by NPR as one of the top 10 innovations that changed urban America, and it's continuing to change. It's exciting to be here. 20 years ago, we launched the Portland streetcar, and it was great to be a part of that effort, extending it to the east side. The arguing that I had to do with Rahm Emanuel, who was Barack Obama's chief of staff. Ultimately, they gave up, gave us the grant, and I think they were proud of what that investment made. And then when we closed the loop, connecting the east side and the west side with the Telecom crossing, it dramatically increased its effectiveness. As we look forward to the next 20 years of the Portland streetcar, I look forward to working with you to support future extensions and continuing to integrate the streetcar to the communities it serves. And I love this proposal you've got for the streetcar ambassador, the rider ambassador, which is a part of the work you've done to try and provide more humane investments in providing resources to help people who may be troubled, may be having challenges, not turning first to armed intervention with law enforcement, but people who are trained to understand people's needs, to help them appreciate how to de-escalate situations or to get them access to services, and to be able to promote this critical criterion of livability in Portland. You all are doing to try and help people in Portland. The work that you all are doing to try and help people in Portland return to a sense of normality. You're dealing with challenges unlike anything I encountered as a member of this body. My heart goes out to you in terms of the things that you are facing. I'm working hard to make sure the federal government is a better partner to help you in terms of housing, in terms of infrastructure, in terms of being a constructive partner. I'm pleased that there are some significant resources that are available to you because of the things that we passed here. And I'm confident that you will invest them in ways that will magnify their impact. And I will just say that I hope that that's not the last investment we make. We will work with you to try and find other opportunities to build on this and give you the resources you need, and a federal partnership that doesn't just meet you halfway, but is actively involved as you deal with unprecedented challenges. As I say, it's unlike anything I experienced in my almost half a century working in these areas at all levels, state, county, city, and now the federal government. I know you've got your work cut out for you. I want to continue to be your partner locally, and that the federal government steps up to provide you the assistance you need. I deeply appreciate your willingness to allow me to parachute in for a few minutes on your council session after a long day, and to add my congratulations for what you're doing and express my support for the recognition that we're going to have this next month on the 20th anniversary of a signal achievement in Portland's history. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Congressman. We appreciate your being here today.
Thank you very much, Congressman Blumenauer. I am now going to turn it over for staff presentations. I have Catherine Claro, Active Transportation Safety Division Manager for PBOT, and Dan Bauer, who's the Executive Director of Portland Streetcar, Inc. Welcome.
If you don't mind, I'll eavesdrop for a few minutes.
Oh, great.
Congressman, you can stay as long as you like.
Well, thank you so much, Congressman and Mayor and Commissioners. I'm Catherine Sherlow. I manage the Active Transportation and Safety Division at PBOT, and the streetcar program is part of that division. Dan Bauer is here and co-presenting with me today. Dan's the Executive Director of Portland Streetcar, Inc. And we'll talk a little bit more about that organization as we move through the presentation. I'm gonna do my best here to try to smoothly share, which never is really that smooth, the presentation that I have for you. Just a moment. And what we'd like to do is basically share a little bit about the streetcar system itself, and then move into a description of the grant, which you are going to accept today, and then talk a bit about the contract extension in front of you for Portland Streetcar, Inc., or PSI, as we'll call it. So before I dive into that, I just want to talk a bit about our governance structure, which is unique. It's a combination of the City of Portland, which owns and operates the system, TriMet, which provides operators and mechanics and the funding for those folks to do their work, Portland Streetcar, Inc., which is a nonprofit and provides, as listed here, assistance in funding, community relationships, and private nonprofit sector partnerships. But I also want to say they really give us a level of agility that we would not have otherwise without that nonprofit partner. And the entire structure is governed by a contract. It's called the Streetcar Master Agreement between TriMet and the City of Portland, which was adopted in 2013. We are the third largest transit system in Oregon. We have an average weekly ridership, weekday ridership right now of about 5,000 or 5,500 riders. That is way down from our pre-COVID level. You can see of 15,000 a day, but it is also steadily increasing as we see a central city and just overall recovery. And we expect to get back up to those earlier levels. I'm going to turn it over at this point to Dan Bauer to talk a little bit more about some system facts and then hit some highlights on how the system advances City of Portland goals. So Dan, why don't you just let me know when you want me to advance slides?
Yeah, that's fine. Actually, it's going to be easy because the Congressman took all of my speaking points, which is great. But I think the important point here for the City Council to recognize is that you own a transit system and all the things that come along with it. And you also own all the levers that make it successful. That includes everything from just investing in the streetcar system itself, the trains, the employees, and all the services, but also all of the things that people use transit for. You control the housing, you control where the affordable housing is located, parks, open spaces, access to resources. These are all city functions. So you have a unique position here where you run the transit system and you have control over all the things that's going to make this system successful in the first place. So just keep that in mind when sometimes you think about your bureaus and silos. You know, we all talked about that before. This really should be a whole city effort to make sure it's successful. To that end, I mean, what we know about the streetcar, and we've shared some of this before, is it's not unique in that it's people use it that live along the line. People are not coming into downtown just to ride the streetcar. It's the people who live next to it, it's the people who work along it, who use the system. And so the investments we're making in affordable housing now, I think we're up to 41% of all subsidized affordable housing is within a quarter mile of the streetcar line. Those are the people using our system on a daily basis. Next slide. Most of our riders are walking directly out their front door. 96% of our riders are walking to access or rolling to access the system. So again, it's not a big park and ride component. There's not a big tourism component. It really is serving people that are located. Just really quickly, I want to just hit on the fact, I think the Congressman hit on this next slide almost entirely here about the streetcar's ability to shape the city and catalyze development in a way that makes sense. But also just the provision of a completely 100% renewable electric transit system in the city is unique. This is just a great way to kind of begin to shape the city. Next slide. Sorry, I'm moving fast there. We want to just kind of highlight some of the things that the streetcar is doing to advance the equity goals and the climate goals. One is the new rider ambassador position. I'm going to talk about that in just a bit. But another is that the fact that the streetcar actually serves a lot of these areas of priority right now. It goes directly by the Broadway corridor site, former post office. It directly serves Lower Albina. That's what we're talking about the future of that area. Keep in mind that you own a electrified transit system that serves that area directly. So just keep the streetcar in your mind as we're advancing on that. The last thing I want to highlight real quick is just a program that PSI started over the summer. It's a Artists of Color program using the streetcar itself to highlight artists in the community. We pay the artists, we pay for the installation of the art on the streetcar. We keep these wraps up for about 3 months, and then we do what we can to boost it on social media. And it's really just a way to use the streetcar itself to portray the city's messages and the messages of our community. And so I just want to make sure people were aware of that. And if you are aware of artists that would like to participate in that program, please let us know. Moving on to the grant. I'm sorry, was there a question? Okay. Moving on to the grant. To me, like all those statistics are great. We have a significant ridership. 15,000 riders a day is more than 2 of the light rail lines in the area. It's more than any bus line in the area. All those, the people using the system on a daily basis and the demographics are great, but those are really pre-COVID things. And so we need to be making investments today to make sure that all those people feel comfortable coming back into the transit system. And that is part of the reason we applied for this grant from the Federal Transit Administration. It was a COVID response demonstration grant. I will say that part of the reason we applied was that written into the grant language, it said anarchist jurisdictions may not apply for the money. So Seattle, New York, and Portland were banned from applying. And that gave us all the more incentive to apply in the first place. But we also wanted to find the funds to do things that we know needed to get done to bring people back to the system. So we were successful in getting the grant. It's really doing 4 things. It's making the trains cleaner. So we're going to be replacing the cloth seats with vinyl so we can clean them more easily. We've already started on that project actually and getting a great feedback on that. One of the challenges we saw during COVID was that messages were changing constantly. The rules about transit were changing constantly. Whether masks were required or not, how many people could get on a train. All of these things were constantly changing, and we had a real struggle communicating with our customers. So for that reason, we're trying to upgrade the signage at our platform from a smaller kind of LED reader board to something more significant that we can have more messaging on and be more nimble with our messaging to the community. So we have funding now for probably 25 LED screens to be installed at our stations. And then the third component was a new position that we're calling the Rider Ambassador. We wrote this into the grant with an acknowledgement that we have a significant population in Portland who's using the streetcar for either shelter from heat or cold or just a place to be during the day, but sometimes need access to resources. And these people always have fares, they're riding in a legal manner, but it would be helpful for everybody to have somebody on the car that helps be an ambassador for the community. But beyond that, just to talk to all the riders that are out there and make sure people have access to resources. Anything from public health resources to interventions on the train itself. Because we run 18 hours a day, 7 days a week, there's a lot of activity on the train. And our goal is to try and mitigate that just as quickly as possible in a humane manner. So we've developed a new job description. I have to say that Opal Environmental Justice was critical in writing that job description. They wrote it with me. Our plan is to hire 4 half-time employees to provide them with full benefit package, and have these people riding the trains and assisting riders in whatever that may be, combating racism, combating aggressive behavior, enforcing mask rules, providing fares when somebody doesn't have a fare, and really to make it a welcoming environment on the street. The fourth component of this is it's actually a research program, so we have to do some qualitative research about what's happening with the program. So Opal will be assisting us with that, but PSI will be doing the majority of the actual research and publication of what's going on. So I think that's where I'm going to stop, Catherine, and if you want to pick it up from there.
All right, that sounds great. And we're going to switch gears now and talk about the contract extension. So if anyone has questions specifically about the grant, it might make sense to take them here.
Very good, colleagues. Any questions about the grant itself? That would be item 503. Not seeing anything at this. Commissioner Keelan, go ahead.
Sorry, Mayor. We did have one person sign up for item 503 for public testimony.
Why don't we go ahead then and take that testimony now, just so it's fresh in our mind, and if that prompts some additional questions before we move on to the contract extension portion.
That sounds good, Mayor. And you should know that we do have some invited testimony at the end, and they, at this point, are planning to talk about 503 as well.
Well, I'll leave it up to the commissioner in charge. We can either do that testimony now, or we can hold off until you have done your introduction of 504. It's really the commissioner in charge's call.
Mayor, I am totally fine taking a public testimony now before we move into the next conversation.
All right. Would you also like to take invited testimony at this time on 503?
Yes.
Okay. Why don't we do the invited testimony first, then we'll ask for input from folks from the community who'd like to testify. So Catherine, why don't you go ahead and start with your invited testimony? Let me know when that's completed. And then Keelan, I'll have you read the names of those interested in public testimony.
Commissioner Hardesty, do you have that list of invited testimony? Or would you like me to call them?
Yes, I do. But I'm fine if you want to call them as well. What's your preference?
Okay. Why don't you go ahead? Thank you.
Oh, thank you. So our guest will talk about the PSI City Opal partnership on the Rider Ambassador Pilot Program. We have with us today Maria Vasconez Taylor, Tristan Isaac, Thomas Craig, and Hui Oing. Pleasure to have you all here. And who's going to start? I see Tristan and I see Hui. Hui, why don't you start since you're right in front of me?
All right. Mayor Wheeler, commissioners, my name is Hui Ong. I use he, him pronouns. And I'm honored to serve as the executive director of Opal Environmental Justice Oregon. We organize low-income people and people of color to achieve a safe and healthy lived environment. We specifically organize transit-dependent communities through Bus Riders Unite by getting on the system and learning about transit needs and share a collective vision on an expanded system free of fares and criminalization. Let me start off by commending the community's ongoing demands for elected officials to address the impact policing has on communities of color, and especially among Black communities. Yesterday's announcement to no longer prioritize low-level traffic infractions is a welcome news and long overdue. We know, though, that encounters with police goes beyond traffic stops. Opal and Bus Rider Unite have long organized and demanded alternatives to police presence and their role on the transit system, and instead prioritize the needs of transit-dependent riders by listening to them and demand community-centered solutions. I am here to share our organizational support of the Rider Ambassador Program through the Portland Streetcar, as one of those solutions. We are pleased to work with the Portland Streetcar Incorporated in support of the design, implementation, and evaluation of the program, and look forward to imagining together the program spreading to TriMet, Oregon's largest transit district.
Thank you very much, Hui. Maya, you're next. Can you unmute? If you're on the phone, it would be *6.
Yeah, sorry, I got it. Sorry about that.
No worry, welcome.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so to Mayor Wheeler and commissioners, hello, I'm Maya Vasquez-Taylor, and I'm the Bus Riders United organizer for Opal Environmental Justice. As was mentioned before, we do a lot of work on the ground for transit-dependent people in the Portland metro area. One of the membership's biggest concerns is in regards to public safety. So I would like to applaud yesterday's decision to no longer pursue minor traffic infractions, as well as the commitment to limit car searches. This is a decent step in the movement towards adequate community safety. As Mayor Wheeler, you mentioned in yesterday's announcement, it appears that you're wanting to engage with these community conversations around safety, and that you're interested in what makes your constituents feel safe. So this is why I hope that you will see the merit in providing necessary funding for the Portland Streetcar to go through with their Rider Ambassador program. A couple of studies released by the LA Metro showed that transit-dependent people who identified as Black, Latinx, or people of color felt disproportionately unsafe when in areas occupied by armed police. And Opal's surveys of transit-dependent people here in Portland echoed the same. So what this means is that police and transit police presence on transportation is an inadequate use of budget for public safety. Our membership instead calls on you to fund community models of safety like this pilot program. This ambassador program is actually very similar to the Rider Advocates program that was active in Portland for 15 years, from 1994 to 2009, and was a huge success. It was much loved by transit-dependent community members and TriMet staff alike. It received the City of Portland's Public Safety Partner Award the same year that its funding was cut. So this is a program that we know people want, and that we know is actually very effective, and that we know actually makes people feel safe and welcome on transit. So if, like you said, you're truly interested in safety, then we hope to see you fund community models of care and safety like this program, because we know that it works. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you. Next, Tristan.
Hello, can you all hear me okay? Cool. Good afternoon. My name is Tristan. I use he, him pronouns. I'm the vice chair of the Opal Board of Directors, and I'm also a member of Bus Riders Unite, a transit riders union representing transit-dependent people throughout the Portland metropolitan area in organizing for a more robust, equitable, and accessible transit system. First off, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to testify today. We at BRU see public transit as a keystone solution to mitigate climate change, build community, improve air quality, enhance pedestrian safety, strengthen the economy, and support dense, livable built environments. The benefits derived from a well-maintained transit system are self-evident, and as such, we hold that public transit ought to be valued and supported in the same way we as a society value public education, public streets, public libraries, and public parks. That is to say, to us, public transit is much more than a mere service, but rather a fundamental right that should be open and accessible to all, including being free at the point of service. At BRU, we also understand that the fundamental role of police is to uphold the systemic violence of the status quo, perpetuate cycles of poverty and oppression to the corrupt criminal legal system and mass incarceration. On transit systems nationwide, this manifests through the enforcement of inequitable fare systems, which are used by police as pretext to criminalize and exclude quote unquote undesirables, including unhoused people and low-income families who are disproportionately non-white. Those targeted are denied access to jobs, housing, healthcare, and ensnared into the system of courts and prisons from which many never escape. These horrendous outcomes cannot even be justified as the cost of a safe and secure transit system. As we know in Portland, the multi-jurisdictional $20 million per year transit police division unambiguously failed to prevent the horrific double murder that took place on the MAX train in 2017, the same year one of its officers extrajudiciously murdered a fleeing suspect right there on the light rail tracks. For these reasons and many more, Bus Riders Unite is dedicated to defunding and abolishing the transit police and fair enforcement, and redirecting those funds towards community-oriented models of safety that prioritize the health and well-being of transit riders instead of criminalizing them over pocket change. We advocate strongly for programs such as TriMet's erstwhile rider advocate model, which operated to universal acclaim for more than a decade before being defunded in 2009, and is long overdue to be reinstated. Bus Riders Unite supports the acceptance of this federal Transit Administration grant to support the rollout of the Rider Ambassador Program. We have high confidence in the potential of this project and look forward to playing a role in its ongoing conception, implementation, and evaluation. Alongside initiatives such as Portland Street Response, we hope this program will serve as a regional model of the kind of community-oriented safety we need to replace the violence of policing. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have Thomas Craig on the line? I'm not seeing Thomas Craig. I'm going to go to Lee Helfand.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Lee Helfand. I'm the organizing director with Opal Environmental Justice Oregon and with Bus Riders Unite, and I use they, them pronouns. Just kind of adding on to the comments that were already made today, I would really just like to uplift our partnership with the Portland Streetcar in building out the Rider Ambassadors program. I'd really like to give a shout out to Dan, who has just been so easy to work with. And I've been going back and forth with community groups to really build out this position description for the Rider Ambassadors. And like was said, it is largely modeled off rider advocates, but we also wanted to give it a modern take that really incorporates what our communities are asking for in terms of more education and outreach to the community in an ongoing way. And so I really want to thank Dan for Portland Streetcar's openness for what this can look like. And also I'm excited to work on evaluating the program and making sure it's successful. And also, hopefully once it is successful, uplifting it as a model that we can spread across the region. We have been talking a lot with the Multnomah County Commissioners, who are very excited to see what this implementation looks like. And because they oversee the intergovernmental agreement between the Multnomah County Sheriff's Office and TriMet for policing, we're also interested in potentially expanding this to the entire region and making the case to community members and to elected leaders that this is really something that will decrease violence in our community and ultimately lead to higher ridership, which we know is extremely important to address congestion and environmental impacts across the board. With that said, I also, of course, have to just uplift all of the hard work that our community members and the partner organizations that we've been working with who have put so much time and work into this position description and will be continuing to engage as the rollout takes place. So thank you to all here who have had a hand in that, and I look forward to rolling this pilot program out.
Thank you very much. I understand Thomas Craig is on the line now.
Yeah, hi, sorry about that mix up there. Thank you for the help, Commissioner Hardesty. Good afternoon, Mayor Wheeler and commissioners of the Portland City Council. Thank you for allowing me the time to advocate in support of Agenda Item 503, an ordinance accepting an FTA grant to fund a proposed project by PSI, supported by local match from the PSI. I suspect it's probably a pretty easy vote to take this money and support the project, and I hope you will. I'm here to suggest that maybe there's more to this project than just getting some extra federal grant money, as awesome as that is. The Portland Streetcar COVID-19 Research Demonstration Project is about attracting folk back to riding transit after the disastrously difficult year and a half we've all been through, which of course isn't over yet. We still have just about all the problems to solve that we had at the beginning of 2020 and many new ones too. We haven't even finished with this traumatic event, yet now we need to get to the possibly even harder work of healing from it. What I love about Portland Streetcars project is that it proposes investments that will help us heal from COVID and remind folk how safe and convenient transit is, but does so in a way that provides possible solutions to the issues that we've had in Portland since long before 2020. The project will fund new vinyl seat inserts that will help the streetcar stay fresh and clean. The project will fund new signage that will help riders know exactly when the streetcar is coming, so they won't need to fumble with a smartphone or have a data plan in order to get up-to-date information on the service. Most importantly, the project will fund new rider ambassadors who will be ready to help folk get acquainted with the streetcar, answer their questions, and resolve potential conflicts and rider concerns in a way that keeps everyone involved safe. Keeping folks safe is one of the key purposes of governments, but the city of Portland and other cities in our country have relied far too heavily in recent decades on outmoded and inequitable procedures and organizations that fulfill that purpose. We've relied on armed officers representing a bureau which seems more inclined towards protecting itself than protecting the residents and visitors of Portland. The Rider Ambassador Program is an effort in a better direction. Similar to the Portland Street Response, this project is focused towards offering a helping hand rather than an intimidating presence. So my suggestion is not just that you pass this ordinance, but that you watch the results of this program as well and consider expansion in the future. We need more and more effective tools in the hands of Portland, the streetcar, TriMet, and other local agencies to help everyone here feel welcome and feel safe. The Portland streetcar is helping put us on the right track in that regard. Thank you.
Mayor, that concludes invited testimony. I think we had one person signed up for public testimony on this item.
Keelan, go ahead and read the individual from the public, and thank you for those of you who provided invited testimony.
Actually, it was Thomas Craig, and he was invited testimony, so there's no one on the line for this.
All right, good. So why don't we leave this item open, Commissioner, and we'll move right on to the contract extension item 504, also an emergency ordinance.
Thank you, Mayor, and I'll have Catherine walk us through it.
Okay, thank you very much. I will again pull up the presentation, and we're going to shift from social justice to contract details, which is not as compelling, but I think is emblematic of the kinds of things we can achieve with this contract. So just share a few highlights. History, the original contract was awarded through a competitive bid process in 2015. It's been amended twice, once for a scope change and once to a year ago extend the contract for a year while we sorted through both COVID and governance study. We've gotten through that. We are now at a place where we would like to extend the contract one more time through the extent of the 5 years allowed in order to keep an uninterrupted set of players and programs in place as we emerge from COVID and work towards Central City recovery. We do expect in 2 years in 2023 to have a competitive RFP. And one of the things we'll be doing in this 2-year period is working to define what should be in that RFP, what services and what our objectives for that are. You've heard a little bit about the types of things Portland Streetcar Inc. focuses on. They also lead on funding strategy, both operations and capital. They manage our customer and public relations, both constituent response, community relations, and then some of the more proactive social media and media outreach. And they help us really engage with the private and nonprofit sector. Budget, you have the budget information in your packet. I won't belabor it, but this does increase the not to exceed amount by, as was noted before, a little over $1.9 million. The actual city contribution is slightly lower, more like 1.6, because that amount includes the grant funds and it includes sponsor revenue that flows through. This agility of the public-private partnership that you're hearing some about and that I mentioned earlier, just wanted to share a couple of examples. The COVID grant, obviously, but PSI has also helped us secure $7 million in CARES Act funding through TriMet. They worked with TriMet to develop flexible schedules and health guidance during COVID. They're doing some project management for the types of projects it's very hard for PBOT to find the capacity to do. And the rider ambassador positions would again be quite difficult to do under sort of city restrictions and personnel policies. Moving forward through these 2 years, we'll be looking to PSI to truly develop and lead a strategy for operations and capital funding. It is an issue. The system's 20 years old. Congressman Blumenauer just shared the joy of that, and we also have the challenges of that ahead of us as well. We will bring that report to you all early next year, and probably part of that will be the project management for the fleet replacement strategy. Again, 20 years into a 30 to 40 year car life means we have to be thinking about it now and really being strategic. And then the PSI will manage delivery of the grant and work with PBOT staff to create a 5-year strategic plan. So with that, that's the end of our presentation about the contract. Happy to offer more information or answer questions. And I just really wanted to go back to where we started with Congressman Blumenauer and those first slides talking about partnership. The streetcar really is unique in that it is a true partnership between us, between TriMet, between our nonprofit partner, and more our community organizations and partners. And it makes the system vital and very, very Portland. We're proud of it. We're excited about it. And thank you for giving us the time to talk to you about this.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Is there any invited testimony for this item?
No.
Very good. Keelan, is there any public testimony on this item?
No one signed up for this item.
All right, colleagues, any further questions or thoughts on this? Commissioner Ryan.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Hardesty, for bringing this to our attention. And Catherine, I really appreciated the presentation. I couldn't agree more that having nonprofit partners allows us to have the agility that we, as you said, that we need when we do our work. So it was great to have the nonprofit partners' voices in the presentation. I did have a question about the data collection and publication of findings. Did I miss the slide that showed the data sets that we'll be measuring?
Commissioner, do you mean with respect to the FTA grant?
There's that's the same amount as for the cloth seats going to vinyl seats. It's 80,000 for data collection and publication of findings. It's always good to know what the data sets are.
Yeah.
Pardon me?
You didn't miss it. We didn't show it. The data collection process, given the nature of this, is going to be pretty qualitative. We're looking at kind of more consumer confidence style reports, surveys gathered from riders on board and at platforms. But then we can kind of tie that in with ridership numbers and just system performance KPIs to kind of blend a story.
No, that makes sense. Could you include safety numbers too, so we've got baselines on that? Because we're making a wonderful investment towards that, and we're trying a different approach, but it's very important to measure when we try new approaches so we can see and evaluate objectively how their what their value is.
Great.
You know, what you measure matters, and I just can't tell what we're measuring right now. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, good suggestion.
Thank you. And I'd love to see that. You can send that to my office when you have those data sets, please.
All right, very good. If there's no further questions, Keelan, please call the roll on item 503, an emergency ordinance.
Ryan.
Yeah, wonderful, wonderful presentation. It's great to see Congressman Blumenauer here, and I vote aye.
Hardesty.
Thank you, Congressman. Thank you, PBOT. Thank you, team. I vote aye.
Maps.
Like my colleagues, I'd like to thank everyone who testified today. I vote aye.
Wheeler.
Aye, the ordinance is approved. Item 504, also an emergency ordinance. Please call the roll.
Ryan. Hardesty,
Aye.
Maps,
Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye, the ordinance is approved. And colleagues, it was a long day today, but we got a lot done. Keelan, that completes our agenda. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Congressman. Thank you, colleagues. Thank you to our Bureau directors. Thank you to all our amazing city staffers. Thank you to the public who showed up to testify. We are adjourned.